do it to us.
We'll keep everything out. Absolutely.
Okay.
Hey, good evening, everyone.
Hey, good evening, everyone. Thank you so much, and we apologize in advance for any inability to hear clearly and understand. Of course, in this environment that we're operating out of mask, and so we'll try and speak as clearly as we possibly can. So with that, we're going to call the Town of Mangonia Park Connectivity Utility Fund Budget Workshop of June 23rd into session. Roll call, please.
Mayor Alberti.
Here.
Vice Chair Johnson. Here. Councilmember Green.
Here.
And Councilmember
Here.
McConnell.
Here.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Of course, we're going to begin with a discussion on the proposed utility fund budget for 2020-2021. Ken?
Mayor, Vice Mayor, and Town Council, thank you for your time this evening. Thanks to our YouTube audience who's either joining us live, actually 45 seconds late, or those who may be watching at a later time. I'm going to try to make this brief and concise. I hope it's valuable information just as much. I'm going to throw a lot of stuff at you tonight. I may have to stop us on occasion and ask the questions. That's okay. I'm really going to dive into the heart of the utility company. We have also our water and sewer engineer, David Stanbaugh. He's going to go over, as we discussed last week in our workshop, some future connectivity issues. And First, I wanted to give you some updated budget numbers. Clerk has worked really hard today to get this prepared. I mean, literally down to the last minute. So thank you, Sherry. And if you find in your packet, you'll find 11 by 17 size paper. At the top of it says Town of Mangonia Park Utility Fund. Budget versus actual fiscal year 2019.
Wait, what am I looking for now?
It's this sheet, page one.
Oh, okay, I thought I said 11.
No, page one.
Okay.
What we have here is the actual amount that we spent this year, your approved budget for this current year, percent paid out, and we've started on the proposed budget for 2021. And we've made some notes in the margin there. Now, this is a work in progress. We're not trying to pass this off as the final submittal prior to your approval or anything like that. This is going to be the very start of our numbers. So, if you will, I'd like for you to just go ahead and look at line 18 on page 1. Under the column that says actual amount, 1920, 19/20. On line 18, you see the revenue utility fund, 711,466. That's the amount of revenue that's coming from the utility fund so far this fiscal year. Now, put a placeholder there and turn over to page 2 on the back. No, my apology. Go ahead and go to page 3. My apology. Next page. All the way down to line 73. It says expenses, utility fund total, 723,902. That's what we have spent out to date. Through today, that's what we have spent out. So if you go back to your revenue, line 18, you see that number 711,466. That's your revenue. Expenses are at 423. So these two numbers are really close, and usually this time of year, they're going to be skewed somehow. Usually you'll have a lot more in one column. These are very close, and I would point out, if you go to on page 1, line 17, it says CDBG. And you see the approved budget. This is under revenue. 330,000. That's the expected revenue coming in from the sewer expansion project. And if you go again, flipping to My apologies. Line 39 on page 2. You can see that that's also the expenditure for that project. And you can see that we've paid out $138,000, but we haven't received any revenue to date. Yes, Ms. Green?
Can we go back now, remember, to the 330,000, you said the sewer is from the sewage expense project.
The one that's going on now on Jeffrey and Sherwood.
Oh, okay, gotcha.
And that 330, that represents the grant reimbursement that we'll receive.
It's Jeffrey and Sherwood, okay.
So we've spent 138, but we've received no revenue. So if you were a little bit worried that we have more in expenditures and revenue, that's a pretty good reason right there. The two numbers are close. Yes, ma'am.
According to the question now, but that project is still, it's not completed, right?
It's not completed. We still have to do some sod repair and paving.
So, so this 330, I'm not, it's just what we have budgeted for the project. So it can go, what I'm saying, it would go, it can go over.
It can go over, but we'll receive up to 360,000. That I know for sure.
Okay.
That I do know for sure. This, when we approved the budget last year, that was the number that we were using.
Okay.
For both revenue and expenditures. So I wanted to highlight that, and if you look on line 18, again, we'll see,
You said 18?
18 on page 1. If you look under the third column, or really the fourth column, it says percentage paid.
I don't have a line 18 on page 1.
Page 1, line 18.
18? I'm sorry.
Yes,
Oh,
ma'am.
I'm sorry, yes, I do. You just showed it to me, thank you.
It says percentage paid 1920, and you look all the way down at line 18. 51%.
Right.
That's the amount of revenue that's come in so far this year. Flip over, page 3, line 73. That same column, percentage paid 1920. You look all the way at the bottom, 52%. So, very unusual this time of year. You've got 51% in the revenue column, you've got 52% in your expenditures. That's pretty good. It means you're going tit for tat on your expenditures and revenue. Keeping in mind our last batch of revenue in the utility fund won't come in until October because of the way our water bills are. We'll be getting those payments in October. That's still for this fiscal year. That was just a brief update on what we have so far as our updated numbers. I'm going to put this out there, and hopefully nobody will throw anything at me. But for the past few years, I'd say at least the past 2 years, we have done a 1% increase on utility bills, water on the base fee, and also a 1% on the consumption. And I think we did attach the resolution from this current year. Through there, you'll see the current rates. What we've done with this budget, when we're looking at the proposed budget for 2021, we've put in the mix at 1% on the base rate and the 1% on the consumption rate. That's factored into this. Now, obviously, council, this is your budget. You tell us no, we're not going to do an increase this year. That's the way it stands. Based on what we've done for the past at least 2 years, and I think you can correct me. I think council had indicated a desire to do a little bit of catch up over. I'm not going to give a specific number, maybe a 5-year period. So, also what we've done. And for your sake, that's line 6 of the revenue. That's line 6, residential commercial water revenue, on page 1. Now, based on our current sewage situation, which there's a lot of unknowns with that right now. If we were to maintain a relationship with Riviera Beach, and their fees that they're wanting to charge us stay in place, and the percentage increase remains what it has been over the past several years, which is a 5% increase. And you may remember, we're paying what we felt like the rate was based on their February 5th, 2018 meeting. You know that story. Giving a worst case scenario, we're with Riviera Beach, and they're able to impose all the fees that they want to. We had to take that amount and of course pass that on to our customers. That rate would go from what we're billing now, $5.16 per 1,000 gallons, to $6.15 per 1,000 gallons. That's a significant increase, but I'm just letting everyone know that's a worst case scenario if we're with Riviera Beach. And again, that's what they would be charging us. We pass that on to our utility customers. I apologize, my mask keeps slipping down. So I wanted you to know, as you're looking at these numbers under proposed budget 2021, that's the mix that we've used. We've used the 1% increase on the water base rate and consumption, and we've used what I consider to be the worst case scenario if we're still with Riviera Beach, which I think everybody knows, even if we decided to go with another municipality or some other utility agency or whatnot, it's going to take, David and I had this conversation yesterday, it could take up to 2 years for that hookup to be complete. So we might be looking at our current situation for another 2 years. And I just don't know at this point what those fees would be. I'll digress on that. I tried to give you kind of a worst case scenario. Questions? Yes, ma'am.
Now, well, maybe I misunderstood you. I thought you said it would be 5.16 per 1,000 gallons if we stayed with Riviera Beach.
I'm anticipating that if we stay with Riviera Beach, it's going to be over $6.
Okay, yeah.
In fact, $6.15, and that would be anticipation as a worst case scenario. Of course, we're holding out negotiating hope to the contrary, but just for budgeting purposes. Sherry, do you want to go through the?
Sure.
If you don't, I'm putting you on the spot. I know the resolution.
I'm
sorry, just
before we do that.
Just before we do that, so that we have clarity on the line
that we have there.
that we have there, when you were discussing line 8,
The sewer?
the sewer.
So
just for the record and for the clarity of the record, what you're proposing in terms of just a budget, we're currently at a rate of 5.16 per 1,000. Okay, and so based upon a 19% increase, we'd be at 16.5
Is how this
is how this is to be understood.
$6.15.
Okay.
Alrighty.
Now, what has been traditionally
the rate of
the rate of increase?
There's
Typically, there's an agency or someone that would normally govern how much of an increase it could be. Normally, that's around 3 to 5%.
Okay.
Okay, we'll clarify for you. So normally, okay, it's about, I think it's up to 5%. But we're just budgeting, we're proposing to budget 19%.
The difference is what they're billing us is $5.82,
Mm-hmm.
and I would anticipate they would tack on the 5% on top of that, which would be 30 cents. That gives us $6.12, rounded up to $6.15.
Okay.
Okay, and again, for everyone.
Okay, and again, for everyone both on the dais in attendance, as well as those who are watching us via YouTube, we do apologize that it's difficult, but for safety of everyone, we're trying to speak through mask. So we're going to ask everybody to be as attentive as you possibly can, so as we're communicating, and we try and have as much clarity as needed. If we need to repeat, please just let us know, and we can do that. Okay? Yes.
I don't
Councilwoman
know
Lee?
about anyone who's listening, but I just noticed something and it worked. When you make the statement, like you just said something, and he repeated what you said, that makes it much clearer, because I can hear better. It's clear when you say it.
Okay.
But through your mask, it's
So what we'll do is
muffled.
Okay, so what we'll do is
So
we'll,
let's do this because he's speaking. through
okay,
the
so
mask.
let's do this, because he's
Well, so
speaking
let's
through the
do this.
mask
Let's-
as well. So let's do this, if we could find out, I'm sorry, if I could have your
There's
attention.
something specifically
We can find out if there's
this
something
mic,
specifically
because,
with this mic,
we're hearing
because
clearly through everybody
we're
else's.
hearing clearly through
So it
everybody
just may
else's,
be
I think.
this mic here.
So it just may be
Look at
this
it
mic here, so we can take a look at it technically.
Those microphones are probably perfect.
Okay.
It's probably the location, I don't know, I think she hears you better when she's sitting down.
Yeah, but I can't hear you. I hear nothing. I can.
Okay.
Okay, so we'll do that
It
for,
helps,
just
though.
for.
Okay, so we'll do that
expediency's
for, just for expediency's sake?
sake. Okay, so for sake of
Okay, so for sake of expediency, what we'll do is we can have that repeated, so that we have some clarity when it's necessary, so we'll do that. Okay?
Any other
Alrighty,
questions as it relates
so,
to?
any other questions as it relates to this part of the budget, line 1 through 18, prior to going to the resolutions? Any other questions or comments?
I just wanted clarification. I think I understand line 12 and 13, capacity. These were fees that you're expecting from new construction. It has not occurred yet.
Correct, it leads from last year as well. Jason Beebe passed away, but his family's still continuing with the project for the self-storage facility on 45th Street. It would have already been probably on its way to building permit by now, but since he passed, that's been delayed. And then you've got those approximately 10 development projects and Hopper, what you say, waiting to be developed. So anytime there's new construction, meaning that, you're building a vacant land, can you hear me?
I heard you say something about 10. I heard you say something about 10 undeveloped properties, and I was going to ask you, because I have no idea what you're talking about.
There's approximately, perhaps not 10, but there's a few projects on the table for development for new construction. For instance, the property across the street that town manager Metcalf mentioned past several meetings. You've got the project on 45th Street that we've talked about for Jason Beebe or Beebe Enterprises. There's 1319 53rd Street, which is 1321 is an existing building, and they're finally, the new owners wanted to continue with the phase of that project from the 1990s. That's being purchased at 4808 Australian Avenue. So these are vacant lands, and anytime you have vacant lands, and you are required to connect to water sewer as commercial or industrial,
Okay.
the plant capacity charges that Vice Mayor Johnson is referring to, they're based on ERCs, and the engineer can explain that clearer to you or more clearly. However, the ERCs are broken into two categories, water ERCs and sewer ERCs. Water ERCs are a little bit more expensive than sewer ERCs, I believe. I think the water ERCs are, $700 and some odd dollars, it's in the resolution somewhere, and the sewer ERCs should be $300 and something odd dollars. The new construction, they have to pay the plant capacity charges based upon their daily use.
Okay.
That's how that's, calculated. So that's what that refers to, all new development. And then also with new development, I can continue on, deals with your application and reporting fees, your inspection fees, your legal fees. So there's a gentleman, for instance, we have one residential project that's possibly on the table for this new budget year or possibly even this fiscal year. And it's undeveloped land. It's in the Bryn Mawr subdivision. I believe it's on Boardman Avenue, 1720 maybe, or possibly, I think it's 1720, maybe 1724. I'm not sure of the address. But he will have to do a water sewer connection and also have to pay the developer's agreement costs for that. And that's how that revenue is calculated on new construction. And there are different categories that they have to abide by. Like they have to pay for the meter installation, they have to pay for the actual meter, and then your deposit and your term on fee. But prior to even getting to that point, they have to pay their ERCs. I don't know, about ERCs for residential, I don't know if it's calculated at the same rate, but the engineer probably could answer that question.
Thank you.
If you want to continue on with the, fees for the resolution, your last resolution, we did not calculate, by accident, we went off the base rate. So, I failed to get that figure for the town manager. It's not going to be substantial, but over a 12-month period, it could be. That 1% that you're considering right now in your budget session, the $12.28 would go up to approximately 13 cents. So that would make that $12.43 for your base rate.
Right.
What that means is that if you're on vacation for a month and you didn't use any of your water, you are still required to pay base rate. Base rate for water, base rate for sewer, and your tax. So if you look at the breakdown of your chart on page 3 of 10, for residential water rate schedule, that base rate currently is $12.28 on the residential meter. Some of the businesses in town were grandfathered into a 3/4 inch meter or 5/8 inch meter that are small businesses and they're paying or were paying that base rate. We're trying to convert the majority over to a 1 inch meter, which is a higher base rate. So your tier, it's not a tier, but your rate schedule is based on your base rate and your consumption. For instance, your base rate is $12.28, so you might go to $12.43 for your base rate. You calculate if you use 3,000 gallons of water, it's currently $2.12, I believe, or $2.07.
I think it is.
My apologies.
It's 207 on here.
It's $2.12, I believe. So that would go up 1%, which you'd still be looking at, what, 2 cents or so? So maybe either $2.09 or $2.14 maybe. If you use 3,000 gallons of water, for instance, for some of you that are single at home, or there's only one of you living there, possibly two, and you're concerned with water, you would be looking at the let's just say $2.10. So that's $6.30 plus your base rate of $12.43. You will receive a 10% tax on that water use only. But remember, once we leave water, your sewer is based upon your water consumption. A lot of customers have difficulty understanding this. So although their bill may be astronomical to them, they're forgetting that their sewer is based on their water consumption. So if they use 15,000 gallons of water, that's 15,000 gallons, 15 times $2.10 plus the base rate. However, in the sewer category, your base rate is, I think, $20 and something. $20.06 will go up 1%, so that's, you're looking at $20.26 maybe. But your sewer consumption with the new rate, if you go to $6.15, you've got 15 times $6.15. So we all know that $6 times 15, I believe, is $90. I believe. That's how you get to that. If they're watering their grass, or if they have company at Thanksgiving, Christmas, Easter, birthdays, a party on the weekend, or someone coming to visit, they forget that they've had that company. When they get their bill, they go ballistic. And they're like, why is my water bill so high? And then you ask them these questions, and they're like, oh, my daughter from Tampa came over with her husband and their 3 children. They were here for 4 days. Yeah, I can see why the water bill is high. So that's basically how the water bill works. The sewer consumption throws everyone off, because the sewer charges throws everyone off because it's based on water consumption. Sorry for being so long and drawn out, but I wanted to really get the understanding of the water.
May I be honest with you? That was never explained to me. I never understood until I heard you explain it when I became members of council.
We try to make sure that we explain to all of our customers, and some of them will have a leak and they forget that they have a leak. And we try to make sure that if they have a leak, then we legally pull a permit with a licensed plumber to repair the leak, unless it's something insignificant. So most of the time they miss out on the building permit part of the process. And if they have the leak, then that's something else that causes a high water bill. They might have had a leaking toilet. A leaking toilet can run an extra 10,000 gallons a month. You'd be surprised. At one toilet, running your water bill up, 10,000 gallons of water, that's a lot. And your sewer charges are still based on your leaking toilet. And for the record, water usage cannot be waived. So a leak for the water cannot be waived. And now that we have the ordinance in chapter 26, neither can the sewer charges be waived. So what the manager has been doing since he's been here is that, I'm very sorry that this happened, but we have to follow the rule of law, or whatever the governing body stated in the ordinance.
Well, I'd just like to add something. If you notice, I was listening to the county today. No matter what, they emphasize two things. Information and education.
And that is more
And
important.
that is more important than you or the mayor, because you bring it down on their level and they understand it. And they will stand there and say it, yeah, you understand, but they don't.
So don't ever think
But
that
when you, and so don't ever think that you're wasting time. I'm not taking anything from you now, because you talk like the town manager. But that's what they need.
She practically has to do this.
You need that, information, education, because that's what they need. They don't understand the legalese that you
Thank
use.
you very much, and don't stop.
So, thank you very much, and don't stop doing what you're doing.
Thank you. You're welcome.
Well, thank you so much.
And then, likewise, the same follows for the businesses. Businesses have bigger meters. Tiffany Lake, Hampton Court has high and low end meters.
Yes.
And I think Hampton Court is now around $20-something thousand a month, right? They usually pay, they have two accounts, and they usually equal to about a little over $20,000 a month. Tiffany Lake has to get a second meter, I believe, to
Yes.
find out what's going on the other side of the circle. And they did apply for the backflow.
All right, thanks.
Okay, all right, thanks.
Any other questions you have, just let me know, and I can try to answer them. We didn't cover fire service line, but most businesses have to have a fire service line, and those fees would increase by 1% too. That just means that when the business opens, line, they have to have a certain size line, I think, at their location, and that's based upon, is it based on square footage or the size of their meter?
Right, a lot of times it's the number of stories, it's the use of the building that would take fire.
Or gallons per day. So if you have a big project, and you use more water, they have to have a bigger fire service line. And that's just for the fire department. Correct, if they have to go out.
Yeah.
All right, thanks. I appreciate
Okay,
it.
all right, thanks. I appreciate it. Okay?
No, really, that's the highlights. I wanted to get this information out. If you have specific or general questions about what we put in front of you tonight on the budget, either current year or proposed for next year. The proposed still needs a lot of work. This is very raw at this point, but this is a pretty good indication. This is after speaking with the staff and kind of gauging their needs. And of course, council may see other needs that we need to include in here. This is what we have so far.
Okay. Buddy?
Okay. Ready?
I noticed
Maybe a week or two.
a couple of weeks, maybe a week or two, Councilman McConnell asked you if it happens that we have to hook up to West Palm Beach, how long would it take? And your answer to him then was a year. But you, tonight, what happened now that you said it's gonna take 2 years?
Well, I asked the expert. I wanted to make sure.
All I needed
to clarify. And Dave, would you say that's a worst case scenario, best case scenario, or?
Yeah, and just to clarify, that was assuming that we would be still moving forward, applying for the grant loan from USDA. And that process is rather lengthy.
Oh, okay.
We expect that that's going to
Right.
take. So
Okay.
getting past that,
Government.
approximately a year to design and construct would be the.
Slows down everything. Government slows down everything.
Buddy? Other questions or comments as it
Ready?
relates to the
Other
budget?
questions or comments as it relates to the budget?
Any other comments or
Proposed budget?
questions?
Any other comments or questions?
Okay. Now, just from a,
Okay. Now,
again,
just from
the
a,
budgeting standpoint.
again, just from the budgeting standpoint of, we can go to page 2.
There's some items, and I understand in terms
There's
of
some
just-
items, and I understand in terms of just the environment that we're currently operating in, that there's going to be some variances that we hadn't seen traditionally, you
particularly as it
know,
relates to how the
particularly as it relates to how the coronavirus is affecting municipalities and their
On line
budgets.
33.
On line 33,
Very
Line
high.
33.
where we have the very
Line
high.
33?
Line 33 on page 3, I'm sorry, page 2.
So for those items, for instance, like.
So for those items, for instance, like the ones where we're actually
What we're running
above,
right now is
because
about
what we're running right now is about 51% in terms of our revenue
Realized thus
that we've
far.
actually realized
But in
thus
some
far.
categories, in terms of our
But in some
expenditures,
categories, in
we've
terms of
gone
our
well above
expenditures,
100%.
we've gone well above
Thus far in the
100%
fiscal year.
thus
So
far in
just
the fiscal
if you wanna
year.
take it sort of
So
in
just if you want to take it sort of in totality,
totality,
line 33, 38, 49, those type
Just
of
a general
lines.
explanation,
Just a general explanation, just so that everyone is fully understanding and for the record, why we might be experiencing those real highs in those categories.
Okay, for the, yes, sir, for line 33, contract services, a lot of times you can take line 33 and line 37, repairs and maintenance. Those could almost be interchangeable sometimes. A lot of that has to do with repairs, if we have to call in, contractor to do some work on an emergency basis or something like that. But I would venture to say line 33, some of that overage, some of that 19,000 could easily be moved to line 37. Because if you see, line 37 is not even 50%. So probably some of that on line 33 belongs in 37. And we can get clarification for you.
It's probably the Hinterland Group for that $16,000,
Absolutely.
right, on 53rd Street. I think
Mm-hmm. Okay.
we had to do a contract.
And that was 16,000.
Right. Now, just before we go to Councilwoman
Right.
Green.
Now, just before we go to
just in
Councilwoman
terms of
Green,
just general explanation
just in terms of just
how-
general explanation as to how, so that it's
may see those
understood
ebb
that
and flows, particularly-
you may see those ebb and flows, particularly in this environment. So, Councilwoman Green?
Going back to contract services.
Going back to contract services, everyone
Who has.
who has a project
Are they
with the
always
town,
under a contract?
are they always under a contract? What makes a person have,
For the town?
if he's doing something for the town, what make it that he doesn't have to have a contract?
Typically, if they don't have a contract, they're working on an emergency basis. If it's a plan that's been designed, approved by council, there's going to be a
You
contract.
know why I asked you
associated.
that?
You know why I asked you that?
I'll tell you what, never mind.
I'll ask you after me.
If we have to call them in on an emergency, and it's over $5,000,
Okay, now
it's
that's.
going to come back.
Okay, now that's where I'm coming from, because this person had worked for the town and ended up paying him $3,000, but I was gonna ask you if he had a contract.
I don't know for some reason.
Because I don't know, for some reason I thought that we had to have, correct me, Ms. Smith, if I'm wrong, if you work for the town in any agency, if it's under 5,000, should you, or do you need to have sign a contract?
So if it's, and anyone can correct me, if it's 5,000 or more, the manager has to bring that to council for approval. And if it was done on an emergency basis.
It wasn't on an emergency basis, but we paid him $3,000.
Then, I don't know if there was I don't know the specific situation.
Okay. Now,
Okay.
If
Now,
it's an individual job, there might not be a contract, there should be an agreement.
ready? If we can do,
Tell you what it was?
ready? If we can
Want me to tell
do,
you what it was?
It's the web page.
You can.
It's the web page.
He has a contract.
You go. I asked you if he had a contract.
already?
I was focused on utilities, I apologize.
When I saw contract services.
It's under, that particular is under contract services under the general fund.
Okay.
Keep going.
Okay.
My question.
okay, so we'll have
All
contract
righty.
services on.
Okay, so we'll
all
have contract services on all of our utility,
funds.
all of
See that
our
repeated.
funds. So you'll see that repeated and
So the
repeated.
general explanation.
So
there, of course,
the
is that
general
from time to
explanation
time
there, of course, is that from time to time, we're going to find that there are some emergencies that happen. And so we'll see lines that will be adjusted and will be out of proportion to what we've actually budgeted. Okay. Righty.
And just in
Now-
general, just to make sure that.
And just in general, just to make sure that we have responsible budgets, and we always have been submitting, and we look at,
From time to time, we also look at.
from time to time, we also look at, those things that happen that are anomalies, and try and determine whether or not these are going to be reoccurring issues. And right now, there's so much unknown as it relates to how our revenues are going to be coming in and at what level. For instance, one of the things in terms of considering going forward, as an example, is that we've had loss of revenue because of the COVID. We haven't been able to rent the park, the community center, and various other things that we're going to see once we get into the general fund, just as information. Okay?
Yes, sir, and we're working on a comprehensive list once we get into the general fund. Flip back over, page 1, on this, you can see some revenue loss under line 13, late fees and disconnects. Of course, council and staff took the positions that no late fees during this time, so basically April through the end of June. We've not been charging. But the thing about late fees and disconnect fees or reconnect fees is that that's a revenue source. So that's an area that we're hit here. As an example. But when we get to the general fund, I think we'll see mostly from the state agencies. There's a couple of revenue sources that we have coming from the county, I think 2. There's 5 or 6 that we have from the state. Everyone knows the state has projected 24 million in this past quarter under their projection. Not a shortfall, but under their projection. So that's obviously going to be passed along to whoever they're giving money to. So we can expect some changes in revenue. I digress.
That's good, okay.
Friday, other questions and comments as it relates?
Friday, other questions or comments as it relates to the proposed budget for utility?
Questions or comments?
Any questions or comments? Concerns?
Hearing none, thanks so much, Ken.
Okay, hearing none, thanks so much, Ken. And we'll move along.
David?
Okay, David?
Okay, and just as David is preparing.
Okay, and just as David is preparing, as always, we encourage you to just take this home and take a look at it, and if there's additional questions, just follow up with Ken.
Absolutely. We're not trying to pass it off as perfect. I'm sure there's a few mistakes on it.
Good evening again, David Stanwell.
Good evening.
This is a presentation that you've seen before, I think back in February last year. It really just summarizes a few things across the town in terms of your water and your sewer system. In some cases, the sewer system is showing areas where we're currently still having properties on septic tanks. Same thing with the water. Some properties are still remaining on private wells. And this kind of outlines those areas and very conceptual thoughts on how to deliver those services to those properties. I'm sorry, can you guys see that okay? I know it's a little blurry and the angle's not the greatest.
Yes, and we have.
Same thing as.
Yes, and we have it here.
Presentation report.
Yes, ma'am. I just put a cover sheet on it. It's the same exact exhibits as you will see in your packet. I know it's a little small, but please stop me if there's something specific you would like me to show. So what we're going to do is we're going to start. This is just a map with an arrow in the background. In this case, we're going to start off talking about the sewer system. Proceed to the next slide and turn the arrow off so that you can see it better. These areas in the colors are where you currently have these private septic tank locations. I know you see a little bit different shading. Those with the cross-hatched shading are actually vacant properties. The ones that have the solid colors are properties that have a current use. So what we've identified here again, in this slide, we're really just identifying the locations that are still currently on septic. Of course, as you know, we still have a few homes up in the Bryn Mawr neighborhood. As you can see, the Triangulars property there that's now been pursued by the Enclave Development. And throughout the Bryn Mawr neighborhood, there's still a few septic tanks. That's very hard to read, but we have approximately 28 septic tanks just in that area still being used. and 14 of those lots are still vacant. Roughly half. Similarly, down in the southeastern area of town, in this area, this would be Australian, and of course, the railroad tracks. I think it's west of Court, I'm not sure. This location, we still have 6 septic tanks here, 7 vacant lots. Over here across Australian, another 10 septic tanks, 12 vacant lots, and then down just south of the railroad tracks, 11 septic tanks and 8 vacant lots. So you can see we still have quite a few septic tanks in the town. Obviously, our goal in moving forward is to try to deliver sanitary sewer service to those properties. There are many different ways of trying to do that. We will talk a little bit about priority. Ken, you'd asked me to look at priorities a little bit, and generally, this is my thoughts on the priorities. The Bryn Mawr neighborhood, to me, is really what I would deem as the highest priority. You have future considerations from the drainage engineer to do repaving in that area. It certainly makes a lot of sense. Let's not put new pavement down and then go rip it back up at some point in the near future. So, and of course, that generally would be my thought process on priorities, focusing on that area. It's going to be the same for the water too. Same thought process. Let's not spend money on new asphalt and then have to rip it back up. There's ways, depending on how you wish to pursue those in the future, or we can break them up into smaller chunks. We can try to pursue it as a bigger area. There's certainly ways that we can maybe navigate how to break that down a little further or to make more sense.
So which one you going to add different, so I just stand there, they're going to finish Red Line in 41 times.
I would just ask for my thoughts from an engineering standpoint on priority areas.
So I need to ask him.
That ultimately is a council decision.
Correct.
Okay, all right. Okay, never mind.
So what I've got on this slide, this is more about the wastewater interconnects that we currently have and that we're considering with the city of West Palm Beach. And this slide also, something that Ken was mentioning earlier, Tommy was mentioning the priorities. You know, we have up in the north western area of the town our master lift station number 1. And the red line, I know it's very hard to read, but that discharges currently our sewage to the city of Riviera Beach. In our very preliminary discussions with the city of West Palm Beach, the thought process would be to connect to one of their wastewater lift stations down south of 45th Street. Again, lift station 1 and the force main that's shown in red are existing. The proposed force main and possibly a lift station to go to complete the connection for the city of West Palm. That's the sewer point. I'll stop right there. Does anyone have any questions about anything else sewer related before I move on to water?
Councilman McConnell?
I got a question.
Councilman McConnell?
I got a question on the sewer.
Yes, sir.
It's not a question. It's not a question. It's a statement. For years, septic tanks, wells were acceptable. Now all of a sudden, they're not acceptable. So what is the problem with septic? What is the problem with septic tanks? For the sewer. I mean, if they're properly maintained. What is the big deal about getting rid of septic tanks?
Well, as you can imagine, the environmental side of that. Is it better to discharge your sewage to a proper facility for treatment and proper disposal, or let it seep into the ground in your house? I think that primarily, or at a very high level, that's the main focus, is that, yeah, it works, and it certainly has worked in the past. But as more and more vacant properties are consumed, right, the density is getting better, or getting more and more. Now you have these properties that are still discharging into the water table. Sewage eventually seeps down into the ground. Over the years, the filtration is provided by the sand, and your septic tank design was what was okay. But as you know, regulations continue to get more and more stringent because population continues to grow more and more. So I just think it's an exposure risk that's being analyzed, like I said, on the very highest level of the authorities, and that's primarily it. We also know that we're dealing with sea level rise, and everyone has their own personal stance on that. I'm going to tell you that as sea level rises, that sewer gets into that water table that much quicker, and now that increases your potential for risk associated with exposures.
What's the difference
Well,
in
what,
that?
what's the difference in that
Than them sending it down
injection wells 20, 30,000
feet?
feet? And they really don't know what's gonna happen.
What is
the difference? I mean, for 76 years,
I've been on septic tank.
I've been on septic tank. 76 years.
Now all of a sudden,
And now all of a sudden,
we can't do
you
that.
know, we can't do
If
this.
you have enough
If you have
I'm not
enough
saying
property,
these developments that
I'm
got
not saying
zero
these developments that got
houses
zero
built on
egress
top of one
and the
another.
houses are built on
Naturally,
top of
they
one
don't have
another.
no place.
Naturally, they don't have no place
So
for
the
a
sewer's
septic.
gonna have to be put in.
So the sewer's gonna have to be put
I
in.
mean, for somebody that has the.
But I mean, for somebody that has the property,
You know, to have a septic.
you know, to have a septic
Especially like
tank,
you take out in the acreage.
especially like you take out in the acreage.
Septic tanks are out
I
there.
mean, how many septic
So
tanks
if
are
it's
out
such a
there?
big deal,
So if it's such a big
why isn't
deal,
the county or developers?
why isn't the
doing
county
something
or
about it?
developers doing something
Doing away with
about
all them septic tanks too?
doing away with all them septic tanks too?
it
I
doesn't
ju- I
make any
just,
sense to me, 'cause I
it doesn't
work-
make any sense to me, because I work in
do
sewer
maintenance.
plants, I do maintenance work,
And you talk to the people who work there.
and you talk to the people
They're
who
drilling
work
more
there.
wells and more
They're
wells
drilling
right
more
out
wells
there.
and more wells right out here
They
on
don't even
Howard.
know what the outcome is gonna be.
They don't even know what the outcome's gonna be with them
Right
injection
now.
wells.
So
right
what's
now.
the difference
So what's the
in a
difference
septic tank,
in a septic tank
pumping it down injection well?
and pumping it down injection
20,
wells,
30, 40 feet.
you know, 20 or 30, 40 feet, 1,000 feet?
So this is just my opinion, it's not no guarantee. You know, at a wastewater plant, you have at least a secondary level of treatment. You're screening the solids out, they're going to the landfill. You're having biological activity to reduce or to improve the water quality of the sewage before it's injected into the ground. So obviously, there's a little bit higher level of treatment at a treatment plant than what's actually going on in your septic tank. You've also learned over the past couple of years the concept of reclaiming water. I think that's a big part of it, right? Because in the past, water's been free. It's technically not free. I know it's not owned by anybody, but it costs money to treat it. It costs money to send it for irrigation on your property or a golf course or a park. And so now they're finding that it's a valuable resource, and let's try to capture it. So whereas there are many plants right now that are not producing reclaimed water, they are all looking at it very heavily, because that's one of the means to get rid of your sewage, is to reclaim it for a beneficial purpose. Last thought with that be is the loss of control at a private residential setting. If something happens there, it's not regulated, no one's watching it, who's to stop someone from pumping it all out into the ground, starting over again? So I think there's also a little bit of a desire for the regulatory agencies to control it better, because right now, if all those properties in the acreage, for instance, if it floods, those owners are going to do whatever they have to do to continue to flush the toilets. And it may mean that they pump it out into the ground, which is illegal, but there's nobody, they can't police that. So I think that's part of it too, is loss of control or a desire for more control by the regulatory agencies. And that's just kind of what we're starting with. And I have varying opinions on it. I sometimes very much support the regulations, and at some points, like I think what you're making, why are they doing that? But in this case, I truly believe that septic tanks, while they have worked for many, many years in the past, we need to start thinking of a better way. And I think just generally that's why.
Because a
lot of people,
they just think it's revenue.
they just think it's revenue. So
Okay, just
they,
say the town.
okay, just say the town. The town needs
Now
revenue.
they're going around.
So now they're going
replacing
around and
everything, doing away with-
replacing everything, doing away with the
And
septic
now the
tanks.
way it works with
And now the way it works with
grants, if you get
the
a
grants, if
Now
you get
you
a
have to.
grant, now you have to hook up.
and, you know,
It's just,
I don't know, maybe I just don't like change.
I don't know, maybe
but
I just
anyway,
don't
wanted
like
to
change.
talk
I don't know, but
to an
anyway, I
engineer
wanted to talk to an engineer
to explain that, what the reasoning was. On all of a sudden, septic tanks are no good. They've been fined for 76. And they've been fined for 76 years for me.
We have Councilwoman Green and
Okay.
then Vice Mayor.
We have Councilwoman Green and then Vice Mayor.
I think, Councilman Collins, that is an excellent question. And I never realized how difficult it is to understand environmental issues. And as long as you're in Florida or Palm Beach County, it's going to be an issue and debatable issue. Sometimes I think developers are the ones that really control everything, and you're environmentalists, because we have so much development in Palm Beach County and Florida. And the environment and the environmental issues becomes, I guess you say, more important than crime is right now, because of the development we have in Palm Beach County, and we're in Florida. And when you start dealing with that ecosystem and down in the ground, and that's the engineer, I know about that much about environment and what you know about. But my entire years in Tallahassee for 8 years, I heard nothing but septic tank, septic tank. And what made me so interested in it is because I lived in Livonia Park. And I couldn't get anybody to understand, and I don't know what you and I were, I don't know if you and I were, but that's when I was learning about them. And my district was out of the acres. And let me tell you, it was a mess out there.
Okay.
So it's really, and you know where I'm coming from, and I remember it's still an interesting issue, a very debatable issue. It's something that we will forever be, I think, we will forever be debating it because it's such an interesting something, but you're dealing with the environment.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
All right, Vice Mayor.
Okay. All right, Vice Mayor.
And just remembering back when I was with the Legal Cities Task Force, environmental task force, and when we were meeting in Orlando, there was a lot of concern about the regulatory properties and regulatory possibilities with the septic issues. And there was a lot of pushback from a lot of the communities who had been relying on septics for so many years. But yet the issue that you brought up, David, was the regulations and that the possibility of misuse was becoming more and more prevalent. And that's the reason why they're trying to get more regulations on septic by changing them out to a system that can be properly
Okay.
regulated.
We're going to get right back to David.
Okay.
But,
We're going to get right back to David, but
had-
also consider too, and David had made mention as
Control.
it
And control
relates
is not
to
always a bad
control.
word.
And control is not always a bad word.
would be
In fact, the word that I would use
Is
would
it
be
easier,
containment.
as he was,
Is it easier,
as
as he was
trying to illustrate, is it easier
trying to illustrate,
to actually,
is it
have
easier
containment
to actually
when you got
have
scattered
containment when you
whales all
got
over?
scattered whales
town?
all over
Let's just say that if we were
over
still on
town?
septic tank
Let's just say that if we were
throughout the
still on septic tank
and you had
throughout the
spillage
town,
from one or two
and you
in
had
certain
spillage from one
locations,
or
then all of a
two
sudden
in
you
certain
have environmental
locations, then all of a sudden you have environmental
bacteria,
issues,
infections,
bacteria,
so all of these things
infections,
become a
so all of these
possibility.
things become a
Let's
possibility.
also say that
Right.
you have a situation
Let's also
where,
say that you have a situation where, in whatever a
septic
septic tank fills up,
So
it
let's
has to
just
be
say
pumped
that you
out.
have somebody
So let's just say that you have somebody who doesn't necessarily have the means to have it pumped out all the time and timely to keep it at a certain level so that it doesn't become dangerous. Then you have this spillage because now it's coming up through. So there are a lot of things that happens and from a legislative standpoint, one of the things that we always look at is the safety and welfare of those people that we're elected to serve. So we can't operate in a vacuum. That being that if we are pumping everything out to a central location, is it easier to contain at a central location than it would be if you had multiple individual locations? It's much easier to contain at a central location. So I fully understand. And if I was on a septic, I'd probably, kind of grit my teeth and say, why are we doing this? Now I got to pay to hook up, but I would be happy to do it. because I would understand the health
and as it
implications.
relates specifically to
And as it relates
Magnolia Park,
specifically to
one of the
Magnolia
things, of
Park,
course, is that
one of the
looking at
things, of
grant
course, is that when you're looking at grant opportunities, we've been able to secure grants in order to go about the mission of taking people off of septics and putting them onto sewer. You have to look at that as well. And what the grants won't allow us to do is to say that, well, within this zone, we'll allow septics. And within this zone, we won't. It's, if the health department, working in conjunction with the legislature and all of the entities involved, determines that septic tanks are no longer environmentally safe, and we're applying for grant opportunities, it's going to impact the whole town. And so just not a section of it.
But
So.
that's all well and good. That's all well and good, but that's just a rule. It's just a ruling. You know, it's just a rule. The government comes up with it. The government comes up with it, makes a rule. You gotta follow the rule. And you gotta follow the rule.
And again,
Still, it-
Right.
to me, it's all about money. To me, it's all about
all about
money.
money. Okay.
It's all about money.
Okay.
And I fully understand and respect
And I
opinions,
fully
like,
understand and
it's been
respect
stated
opinions,
here,
and like
varying
it's been stated
opinions.
here, there will be
But
varying
again,
opinions.
what we have to
But
look at
again,
is that
what we have to look at is that we can't operate in
whatever we do,
silos,
whether it's,
because whatever we do,
whatever means
whether
it
it's
is,
through
what happens
whatever
on my
means it is,
property,
what happens on my property, if something hazardous happens on my property, I then, at that point in time, have a negative, potentially negative impact on my neighbors. So it's not an isolated situation, so it's something negative happening on my properties. And that's one of the charges we have as legislators at this level, at the county level, at the state level, at the national level, is to attend to the whole. You know, and how do you go about doing that? And you're not going to satisfy everybody, and that's fully understood, so.
Alrighty?
Okay.
With that?
Alrighty,
David?
so with that, David?
I'll move on to the slide that I have prepared for the water system connectivity. Again, same image that you've seen before, which is really just the aerial. I'll flip the aerial off. As you can see, very similar to the sewer areas that are still on septic. Many of these same areas are also still using private supply wells. Again, as you can see, there are a few vacant properties that are still don't have the opportunity to connect to a water line like that. So again, I've just added in the numbers just so that you can see it. Up in the Bryn Mawr area, you can see we have currently 9 private supply wells with 1 vacant lot. Again, this area, southeastern area, north of the railroad tracks, but west of Australia, 7 private supply wells, 7 vacant lots. Again, this area in purple, 4 private supply wells and 7 vacant lots.
Educate me, when you say supply well, what is a supply well?
It's just a well. It's just a well water is what you probably commonly hear the term, someone whose house is on well water, which is essentially they've got a pipe that goes into the ground and they pump it into their house with no treatment.
I have one, that's why my yard is like it is. I value my well, it's in the, when I bought the house, that's why I bought it, because of the well. I love it. And is that a negative about having a well like that? Oh, I use it for water my lawn. So is it a negative? Is it anything environmental negative on that?
From the standpoint of your home use, you're using potable water supplied by the town. But for irrigation purposes, you're pulling that water out of the ground, you're spraying it on your grass, and it's going right back down. So the only negative that I've ever heard of is the impact of fertilizers and things like that you might be putting on your yard and making nice and green. And now you're washing it and soaking it. But if you're doing that in best management practices, if you're someone who over-fertilizes, you're not.
Well, I have tulips, so I think it could be impacting the environment because of the
Well, like I said, if you're practicing best management practices where they're not overdoing it,
okay.
that means your grass, your plants, they're consuming the nutrients you're putting out.
Okay, you're right. Okay.
It's not going through them or around them because it's so much it's going into the ground and now you're actually affecting the groundwater.
Okay.
So,
Thank you for that.
Okay.
this slide is just meant to identify more about the treatment side of things. I've mentioned this in the past. I encourage us to consider some things in terms of our water treatment plant and how we provide water to that plant for treatment. So currently, our treatment plant is located up in this area to the north. We have only 2 current active wells. We do have one as backup, but we tend to not use that as much because the water quality is a little bit worse. We have 2 abandoned wells, meaning they were once available for use, and for whatever reason, they are no longer available. South Florida Water Management allows you a minimum of 2. I don't know about you guys, but I don't like going with bare minimums in anything that I do, right? So I always like to have backup. I encourage us to consider at some point in time in the future, how do we want to back up our system? In the current permit with the South Florida Water Management District, they call it a water use permit. We have already permitted, and this was before my time, 2 new water supply wells. We've met with South Florida Water Management District, and they said, sure, anytime you're ready, basically send us the notice and we can get going. They are permitted. Now, those, for whatever reasons, were permitted, and I'm going to point to the Highlight property. They actually were cited on the Highlight property for the future installation. Now, there's a lot of things, and I won't even get into that and how you negotiate that property. But I just wanted to say that we currently have 2, and that is the minimum. And we actually have the ability, approval, to say it that way, from the management district to put in 2 more. So we have no backup in terms of our raw water supply. So in that case, just like with your home, it pulls the water out of the ground, it sends it to the treatment plant filters it, chlorinates it, and then provides it to the distribution system. So the backup plan to what we currently have now is a water system interconnect with the city of Riviera Beach. That is located up on the north end in Australia. We have one interconnect. I've also identified some previous discussions here was a potential water interconnect with the city of West Palm Beach as well. Town manager indicated that there's certainly some future work to be done with how we deal with Riviera Beach. I encourage us to consider maybe at some point in time a future interconnect with the city of West Palm. To me, that is a method of not having all of our eggs in one basket, having some backup plans. So we have a few options here. More wells, additional interconnects with neighboring cities. There's some things there that I think should be considered at some point in the future. That's really all I had in terms of the water and the sewer system connectivity. So as you can see, we've got a little bit of work to do ahead of us. Same thing with the priorities for the water. As I mentioned, Benmar, I think, would be my ideas of priorities. We have some very high level order of magnitude costs. I'm not sure if you wanted to mention any of that tonight. Let me just say, none of these designs have actually been performed. To the tune of, we laid a pipe down a road and tried to estimate what that cost would be. And all sorts of additional things that have to go into that to be able to further define that design. So when we have this very conceptual approach to try to develop a cost, we apply a safety factor to the tune of marking it up 50%. So these costs may seem high to you, but it's just because there's so many unknowns that have yet to be investigated. I don't want to come in here to you and say it's going to be $2 when it's going to cost you 10. Right. So.
I guess I'm looking at the right planning. It shows where the present water filtration station has one abandoned well number 1, existing well number 2, and then I see abandoned well number 4, which is on the right on the property line with Riviera Beach. Abandoned well number 5. Then I see existing well number 6, which is
It's at the park.
yes, okay. So I don't see where well number 3 is, and I also want to know when there's an abandoned well and an existing well at the property at the filtration center, what does that mean?
And the numbering system was established, so at some point, I'm sure there was a number 3. I have no idea right now what happened. It was probably just decommissioned a long time ago. But you already had wells 1 through 6 built, so it just got taken off the radar. Wells are normally abandoned, decommissioned, or whatever, when the water quality starts to turn back. Wells are not forever. There's no guarantee that because you got great water out of this well today, in 10 years from now, it's going to still produce that same water. As you can imagine, it's a big pump that sucks water from the ground. Sand sometimes clogs the pores and the voids in the limestone formation below ground, stops performing as you wish. There's many reasons why a well goes bad. It doesn't necessarily mean that there's some really bad contaminant here. And I don't want to give you that fear that just because we have an abandoned well on the water plant site, that's due to some petroleum product spill or something. It's most definitely not. It's just sometimes it becomes a non-producer, if I can say it that way, whether it's in terms of the amount that it can provide or maybe the quality that it provides. It doesn't mean that it's a dangerous situation. We just decide at some points that that well has reached the end of its useful life and it's time to consider other options.
Okay, so the existing wells, the 2 and existing well number 6 are the 2 functioning wells that we have.
That is correct, yes. I think I misspoke. I said earlier there was 3, there was 2 abandoned, there's actually 3.
3. McConnell?
Some,
I'm sorry.
I
McConnell?
mean, some wells, they just.
I'm sorry, Vice
I
Mayor.
mean, some wells, they just go dry, right? I mean, there's just no more water. There's some discussion about, you know, that's what causes sinkholes. All the water out of the ground. As it pumps all the water out of the ground, you got a big void down there. And then, that's where the sinkhole comes from. That's where the sinkhole comes from. But,
I mean, like I said, yeah, there's things that migrate, even though they're 150 feet below the ground, like sand. Sand is a very common thing that's looked at in a well, because the ground is very porous. There's big, large voids all over the ground, and as you continue to pump out water that has sand in it, you're migrating that sand. I'm not an expert in sinkholes. I've heard the same thing from Central Florida, which is sinkhole mania. They're everywhere. So I can tell you a lot of those sinkholes probably weren't due to municipalities treating the water and pulling it out of the ground. It's probably also contributed to something in the cycle of the earth.
Vice Mayor? Okay. Vice Mayor?
No, I just want to make sure it was still clear. Abandoned wells 4 and 5 are considered to be healthy wells, which is
They've been abandoned for one reason or another, so they are no longer usable.
Oh, okay.
So in some cases, I think that number 5, I think has been completely disconnected and capped. In fact, when you abandon a well, the health department makes you disconnect it. You actually have to have no physical connection to your water system.
Yes.
So they are no longer usable. There's no, let's go back and turn it on.
Yeah.
But then again, when you make reference to an additional well, that means we'd have another place to drill and pump
Yes.
for a new well.
And I want to make sure you know that in the proposed, for instance, in the proposed wells that are included in our current permit, those are on the other side, the south side of the railroad track that's highlighted. There's currently no water pipe that can deliver that groundwater to the plant. So when we're thinking about putting new wells in them, we must also consider how to get it to the plant, how to get the groundwater to the plant. So that's part of it.
And just briefly. And just briefly. Yeah, and just briefly, historically. Yeah, and just briefly, historically, part of the reasons for, of course, the abandoning of the wells is not because, as David stated, there were some pollutants in it. And clarify if I mistake. But I guess from an engineering standpoint, when you speak about contaminated well, that simply means that there's no pure water coming out of it. It could be sand. that
Sort of
you're
like if
dredging
you've
up as
ever
well.
let a
It's sort of
car
like if you've
run all
ever,
the way
you know,
down
let a
and
car
you're still
run
trying to
all the
crank
way
it,
down and then
all
you're
the
still trying to
impediments that
crank
has
it. Now you're
gathered
going,
at the
all the
bottom,
impediments that has
sucking
gathered
up
at the bottom, you're going to now start sucking up through your
similarly,
injectors.
what happened with
So
that,
similarly,
at least I think
what
two of the
happened with
wells
that, at least I
over
think
the
two of the
years that
wells
it's been
over
discussed
the
by
years that has been
engineers,
discussed by
was that they
the
were
engineers,
abandoned because
was that they were abandoned because,
stated by David, they were no
as was
longer
stated by David,
useful, and
they
that
were
if
no
you
longer
continue to try and
useful,
suck
and
and
that if you
siphon out
continue
of
to
it,
try
you're
and
gonna start
suck and
pulling up
siphon out of
stuff
it,
that
you're going to start pulling
actually
up
contaminate
stuff
the
that
water.
would
Not that
actually
there was, like
contaminate
you
the
said,
water. Not that there was, like you said,
Now
contaminants
also,
or anything.
there are
Now
times when
also,
I guess the aquifer would
there are
shift
times when I guess the aquifer would
or
shift
become not
or
as
become
producing.
not as
Tap into it.
producing. If
Is
you
that a
tap into
possibility
it,
as well?
is that a possibility as well, that there's a shift in water and?
It's a little bit of a weird concept to grasp, but the water underground moves.
Mm-hmm.
It moves in generally a direction, and as you can imagine, it's carrying sediment. So there is changes in the ground regs, and you're correct, sometimes they go dry. And in my home in Central Florida, a well that we pump for irrigation, all of a sudden is no longer supply from water. It just, things change, and that's just like I mentioned, that's maybe just a natural progression of our earth. We always have
Correct.
to be
But I
ready
just
for that.
wanted to say for the
Correct.
record.
But I just wanted to state for the record, and we'll come right to you, McConnell, to state for the record, that it wasn't as far as I remember, that, we got a problem, we've just found a whole bunch of impurities and contaminants, we got to shut it off. It was basically that they had almost served their usefulness, and continued operation would have, at that point in time, started sucking in things that are, like sand and various other things that was necessary.
Another conditioning part of the
Certainly.
what commonly happens is it's a steel pipe.
Mhm.
It goes into the ground. A steel
Rust.
pipe is 50 years old.
It's gonna rust.
It corrodes. It starts falling apart. That's just what I like I said, that's why I use the term end of its useful life. Things are only made like in that environment to last so long. There's no material that we can put there that's going to last forever.
But now,
Correct.
when they put wells down, they put a plastic lining.
That's correct.
That's correct, right?
Well, and as you can imagine, yes, they do, and there's certainly help with the longevity. Things like that can be done. But over time, there's sand. What do you think? Yeah, it's like sandpaper constantly rubbing against the surface. Eventually, it's going to wear out. Nothing can withstand. Nothing has
Forever live shell.
no matter what. Engineering practices are allowing things to last longer, and that's
I mean,
certainly great. But
it's just like. I mean, it's just like when they deepen the canal right out here on 45th. When they deepened that.
Wells in Brennmore.
We lost wells in Brennmore.
Lost wells in Revere.
And we lost wells in Revere Beach.
That canal, it cut off.
When they deepened that canal, it cut
I
off,
guess just cut off the water supply.
I guess just cut off the water supply.
Well, what happens is now you're pulling more water into that canal system, right? So it probably has a tendency to lower the groundwater table after you home. I wasn't familiar with that issue, but as you know, in South Florida, there's canals everywhere. They've got the management district, that's their job, they control that water. And they've got to control it under the most adverse conditions, the hurricane, or very intense rainfall. So they have to have that ability to convey that water out of here or else it's going to flood. So there's things like that that, you know, it's meant for a beneficial purpose, but sometimes it has.
An adverse effect.
Okay. Marty, any
Okay.
other questions or comments?
Marty, any other
Anything
questions or
else,
comments? Okay, anything else, David? Okay.
Thanks. If there's no other questions or comments.
Thanks. If there's no other questions or comments for David? Okay, anything else?
Just a quick comment in regard to sewer and revenue. We don't make any money at all. In fact, we lost money for a lot of years. And at best, we would be breaking even at best, but we're still catching up. So there's no real revenue in regard to sewer. And when you have a pipe that needs to be repaired, taking sometimes from 15, 20 grand, come on. I think we do a much better job now, but there's no revenue. And I really don't have anything else.
I mean, according to your figures.
I mean, according to your figures here, you're in the red.
Am I right?
There.
Ken?
Am I right,
According to the
Ken?
figures you gave us.
According to the figures you gave us, we're in the red.
A little bit.
Yeah.
A little bit.
Yeah.
It's really,
So
Yeah, so
about a
really a-
break even.
about a break even.
it really is, and as far as budgeting goes, I tend to budget expenditures high and revenues a little bit lower, just in case. So, yeah, that's
The other
probably.
question is.
And the other question is,
Test wells that we
the
put
well,
down
the
on
test
the
wells that we put down on the
That
highlight
was
property,
under,
that was under,
contractor was gonna develop
a
that.
contractor was
Gave
gonna
us
develop that land. He
area.
gave us
So-
that area.